Henshin!
Standing by. Complete.
Greetings, heroes of the internet. I'm Travis.
And I'm Nathan.
And we are the Henshin Men, a podcast that celebrates Japanese superheroes and their high-flying and high-kicking adventures.
In this installment, we will be discussing Kamen Rider Episode 13. Lizardlon and the Large Monster Army, Tokageron to Kaijin Daigunden. Resurrected shocker monsters fail to break into a research lab because of its protective barrier. They create a new monster, Tokageron, to have one powerful enough to use a weapon to destroy the barrier.
So, Nathan, in this episode of Henshin Men, we are only going to be covering one episode of Kamen Rider.
Yes, because this is something of an ending?
Yeah, it's kind of an ending, but also kind of a beginning.
Yes, and also, I think we should... Let's talk about this actually right off the bat, because this episode is unique because it was actually released in movie theaters, you told me.
Yes. So I don't remember exactly when Toei started doing this, and I don't know if Subaraya was doing this at the same time or not. I know Toei was doing it, but they started taking episodes of their tokusatsu shows and releasing them theatrically. They did it for the Spider-Man Japanese Spider-Man series. They released one episode in the theaters. They did it for a few of the Super Sentai shows, and they did it for a lot of the Kamen Rider shows. And this was a Showa era thing that Toei would do. In the Showa era, they would take just one episode of their show, usually the biggest episode, the one that has the most going on in it, whatever, and they would release it in theaters, not really altering it at all, not doing anything to it, just releasing it directly into theaters. So this actually is the first, if you want to count it this way, the first Kamen Rider movie.
Do you want to tell? Well, we'll save that for later, because the title for this Kamen Rider movie is funny.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, we can mention it. Like, when it was released in theaters, it was retitled to Go Go Kamen Rider.
We got to sing the song.
Go Go Kamen Rider. Go Go Kamen Rider.
Mighty Morphin Kamen Rider. It works so perfect. Why didn't they do that when Saban made Masked Rider? That would have worked. Just recycle the show. No, we don't. We want to pretend that it's in its own little universe. Whatever. That's a tirade for another day. But I can definitely see why, because this episode is kind of bonkers.
Yeah, it's almost like a greatest hits.
Something that's for something that's only 25 minutes long, it feels like a lot happens.
Yeah. Oh, I want to mention real quick though, when we're talking about the movies, so I said that this was a Showa era thing that Toei was doing, was releasing like episodes into the theaters, but it did become a Japanese kind of production studio tradition that they would air a show all year long, and then they would have a movie at the end of the year to kind of like celebrate and also kind of finish off. And that started after this. This was before that that tradition started. So later on down the line, if we talk about other Kamen Rider series, pretty much every Kamen Rider series has a movie that was released, because they would do that for every series. But this was the first time they did it, and it wasn't really a movie produced specifically, to be a movie. It was just this episode that they released. But yeah, so that's how this is kind of the beginning of a trend that continues on in Kamen Rider, but it's also the end of something, because it is the end of Hongo and Hongo's time as Kamen Rider, at least for now.
I was going to say his first run.
So we had mentioned in the last episode how Fujioka, the actor who plays Hongo, was injured in a motorcycle accident and had a fractured leg, and he was having to recover from that. So the last 2 episodes and this one have kind of been this transition period where they used pre-recorded footage of him to fill in the gaps, but also they just had him basically be in the Kamen Rider suit. Well, they had a stunt actor in the Kamen Rider suit for most of the time, so that way they could work around the fact that the actor wasn't on set and was able to film. But yeah, so this is kind of the end of the Hongo era, at least to begin with.
Yeah, it's because you told me, I mean, spoiler warning to anybody who hasn't seen this yet, that he's coming back.
Yeah, he's coming back. It's going to be a while, but he's coming back.
And then we get, I think what you told me is that we get 2 writers, so double the fun.
Yeah, we get 2 writers for a while, but we'll get into the second writer in the next episode.
And you told me that's become a Kamen Rider tradition now, because it was, and it happened by accident.
Yeah, it kind of, it's interesting how so many other Kamen Rider series through the years have started bringing in a secondary writer, or sometimes more than one secondary writer. Sometimes they have a bunch. Looking at you, Kamen Rider Ryuki, with your 12 writers.
Better Kamen Rider Dragon Knight in the States.
Yeah, and but yeah, so that does become kind of a tradition in a lot of Kamen Rider series. Not every Kamen Rider series, but most of them, to bring in a secondary writer. And they tend to play either a small or major part depending on the series. But yeah, it really started with this one only as a necessity because of Fujioka not being available to not being able to record.
And I was actually made aware of this thanks to Masked Rider the First, because it actually got released in the States as Masked Rider the First by, I think it was Tokyo Shock, I want to say. But it was it was the reboot movie from the 2000s that was basically a movie adaptation of the story of this series. It's based more directly on the manga, and they had 2 Kamen Riders in that. So that's how I became aware of this story for this series, and then became aware of the trope, because I bought that. I managed to find that movie. It's long out of print in the States, but I managed to find a copy of it, and I picked it up, and I was very glad I did. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Yeah. You gotta watch the sequel, Kamen Rider the Next.
Yes. I know where I can pick that one up too, but we're not here to talk about that. So first thing I want to talk about is, you and I had a debate about this before we went on the air, because we have no clue what to call the monster of the week in this one. Because one title says one thing and another title says another. Because on the, I believe, I can't remember. No, in the subtitles on the actual episode, on both the title and when the monster's name is said, they say Lizardlon. But the title on the Tubi and Shout Factory listing, and if you pay attention, this is how the characters actually say it in Japanese. It's Tokageron. And
right.
So we don't know what to call. I'm going to stick with Lizardlon, to be honest, just because it's a little bit easier to say. But or we could just use my little nicknames for him, which are Bootleg Godzilla and Gorn Cousin.
Yeah, yeah, he kind of looks like what's the monster's name from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Is it Scissored or something like that?
Snizzard.
Snizzard, that's it. Snizzard.
Yeah,
He kind of looks.
You're welcome, Michael. I remembered the thing's name.
Yeah, so he does kind of look a little bit like Snizzard.
Good Lord. This costume, I like the costume, but I'm also sitting here going, you saw a lot of Godzilla movies, didn't you?
I mean, it's Toei, so of course.
But yeah,
so,
for those who don't know, when I say Gorn cousin, there's a very famous episode of the original Star Trek show. It's called Arena, where Captain Kirk gets transported to an alien planet and has to fight a lizard man.
dun 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 dun.
And Lizardlon basically looks like the Gorn with a long tail and Godzilla spines.
And he's a soccer player. You know what?
Soccer player that you kind of don't like because he's a bit of a jerk, but he gets forcibly kidnapped and transformed. So you kind of feel sorry for him a little bit.
Not really.
I guess not. Confession.
I don't.
Confession. I actually caught that scene one time really late at night on Tokusatsu. I was just channel surfing, like, oh, I would see what's on Tokusatsu right now. Oh, it's Kamen Rider. What the heck is going on? Oh, that part.
I kind of want to title this episode of the podcast "Bend It Like Lizardlon." And I don't know why that didn't occur to me before I wrote the notes, but
I mean, they lean into the soccer stuff a little bit, but not a whole lot, because Lizardlon is the new kaijin of the week, but the big draw is what I have deemed. You've heard of Spider-Man's Sinister Six? Oh, Shocker looked at the Sinister Six and said, six isn't enough. We, Shocker, have the Evil 11.
Yep. I mentioned a few episodes back that Cobra Man being revived was a foreshadowing of what was coming in the future, and yeah, here we go. All 11 previous monsters.
I even said, it's like, why doesn't the Shocker's running into the same problem that all of these Toku hero shows always have? Why don't they just unleash an army of these monsters of the week? And he was like, oh wait, there's more. And
yeah.
Like, oh, and then today it has finally happened. So we have the Evil 11. All 10 of the previous kaijin who have been slain by KR magically get revived, and their excuse is, because I'm like, don't most of them explode? And their excuse is, well, if we can find the parts, we can bring them back. I'm like, okay.
Again, we're also, recognizing that these are not like flesh and blood monsters. These are actually cyborgs, even though they're all animal based, which is weird. But yeah, so this kind of touches into the cyborg side of things, that they can be rebuilt because they're mostly machines now, apparently.
But you know, you were talking about other funny titles. You know what else you could have titled this episode?
What?
Shocker and Soccer.
Ha! Oh man. So so this episode / movie opens with two guards who are protecting, is it the gold reserve again? I've missed where they were.
I think it's a lab.
Oh, it's a lab. Okay.
Well, what is the plot? What is our plot synopsis say? Does it mention? Oh yeah, it's a lab, research lab.
Oh right, research lab. That's right. I was thinking they were trying to break into the gold reserve again. It's like,
no, I would have
failed twice.
Yeah, I would have remembered that, because now they've given up on the get rich quick schemes, and now it's just like, get flashlight of doom and other fun things.
Right. Yes. So we have two guards that are protecting the perimeter of this lab, and who should happen to show up but the Batman,
Oh, Bat Dash Man.
Bat Dash Man, and the Scorpion Man from previous episodes. And if you didn't know that that's what was happening in this episode, and you saw that, you'd be like, "What? But they were defeated."
What? They're supposed to be. And now I'm having flashbacks to the Emperor's New Groove. He's supposed to be dead.
So, and then they try to get into the lab, but they find out that the lab is protected by an energy barrier that is so strong that even a nuclear bomb cannot get through.
Where is this? Can we have more of this nuke-proof technology? I think this would come in very handy.
Yeah. But don't be alarmed, viewers, listeners, because Shocker has a plan to get through the barrier. What is their what is their big plan to take down the barrier? It's a thing called, and I'm not kidding you, the Barrier Destruction Ball.
You know, I've seen enough Power Rangers to realize, roll with it. I actually did not think to hit that button until right when I said it. So, whoops.
So that's their plan. But the hiccup in the plan is none of the monsters are strong enough to launch the ball from the safe, what is it, 20 meter or whatever distance that they need to be. So they have to invent a new monster that can kick the ball far enough to hit the barrier and destroy the barrier. So of course they have to go and find the world's best soccer player, who also happens to be a jerk, because why not?
He's the jock that from high school that never stopped being the stereotypical jerk.
Yeah. He is just like, he just pushes all these kids away, and then is like,
how does it feel like to be number one because I'm carrying the team? She's like, okay, Cobra Kai, are you done over there?
Yeah, it's great. But they like you said, there's a scene where he gets kidnapped by the Spider-Man.
Well, no, I can't say Spider Dash Man because that's technically also the American superhero.
Or Man Spider or whatever. Yeah, he gets kidnapped by this guy.
I can't say Japanese Spider-Man.
No, can't say Japanese Spider-Man either.
What do we call this thing to differentiate him from the actual Spider-Man?
He's Spider-Man. I mean, that's what he is.
Anyway, moving on. Common Spider-Man. I don't know.
So one of the things I like about this episode, and it's the same thing I've already said a few times, and I'm kind of repeating myself over and over again, but it's that the side characters get more play than Kamen Rider, because of course with Fujioka being out because of his injury, they had to fill in that space with something. Now they had already introduced a few episodes back this character of Kazuya Taki, and he gets a lot of play in this episode.
Yes, and admittedly, I'm a little suspicious of this guy because he casually jumps over a 15-foot gate.
Yeah, he casually jumps over this gate.
And Ruriko doesn't seem all that surprised by it. I'm like, wait a minute.
And he also seems extremely interested in helping them defeat Shocker. So let me ask you this, Nathan. We know, just because of us talking, and kind of spoiler because it's been 50 years since the show was on.
Yeah.
That we know there's a second rider coming.
Yep.
And you know that this character has suddenly showed up and can jump really high,
Yep.
and is now going after Shocker and trying to solve these Shocker mysteries and stuff and trying to beat the bad guys. What do you think this is leading to?
And we've seen him handle himself with Shocker goons. And spoiler warning for this episode, turns out he's a Japanese FBI agent.
He is part of the FBI. It's a big revelation. Dun, dun, dun.
Which I guess means he must be Japanese American, technically.
I don't know. I don't know. I think the FBI. I think the creators of the show were just saying FBI because they thought of like maybe Interpol, that it was like an international thing. But
Interpol would have actually made a bit more sense. And
right, yeah, but I think they thought FBI might have been like that. CIA would have made more sense than FBI.
Yeah, really. But and Interpol was kind of a popular thing in the 70s. I mean, there's several Godzilla movies that were made in the 70s that have Interpol agents in it. So,
yep,
yeah. But I mean, admittedly, as I mentioned, I've seen Masked Rider the first. Unfortunately, not all the characters' names are coming back to me. So, I think our boy Taki here is Rider number 2. So, because there's no other way. It's just like, dude's just casually using superpowers, and for some odd reason, Ruriko is not at all surprised by it. There's no reaction from her whatsoever. She just saw a man casually jump a 15-foot gate, and she's like, okay.
I'm not going to say anything because I know what's coming in the future, and so I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to let you watch and enjoy the experience yourself.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But so we've got this guy, and he's doing his thing, and then we get when he's investigating this mansion, we get to what I think is probably one of the funniest scenes in the entire episode, which is he sneaks into the house and he comes to this, and I will admit when it starts, it's actually kind of eerie. He comes into this huge room, looks like the inside of a very large closet. And there's these 10 figures all draped in sheets. They look kind of ghostly, to be honest, even with bed sheets over themselves. It's still kind of ghostly with the music and everything playing. And then he goes over and he pulls the sheet off, and I don't remember which one was it. It was the pitcher plant man. And then he's like, what is that? And then he's like, oh wait, it's made of clay. And I'm thinking, is that supposed to be meta?
Yeah, because that does bring up a question, because I thought that they were going to say that these monsters that they've revived are not actually the real monsters. They're actually statues that they've just kind of animated and stuff. And so that this was going to be the big reveal of like, oh no, they're not actually revived. They're just statues that they've animated somehow. But no, they just happen to look like they're made of clay, and these are the actual kaijin that are just pretending to be statues. I don't understand the point of that scene.
It's just to show that they've revived all 10 of the previous kaijin. Although for a hot second I also started wondering, does this guy go around collecting dead bodies and putting them on display like they're statues? That's a horror movie waiting to happen.
Yeah. Now, I said that one of my favorite parts about this is that the side characters get, but that's true. But I also really like, because it does tie into one of my favorite superheroes, which is Spider-Man, is that you see the struggle that Kamen Rider has to go through to beat the bad guy. Like for the most part, like they haven't been decisive victories, like really easy victories up to this point, but they've definitely been kind of easy or on the easier side. He hasn't really struggled that hard, but this is the first villain where Kamen Rider really struggles, and he actually gets beaten down at one point and has to build himself back up
with foam rocks.
Yeah, with foam rocks. Which leads into, because I talk about so much how much I love Tachibana, And Tachibana gets some play in here as an actual mentor.
Mhm.
Like Tachibana is famous in the Kamen Rider franchise as being the mentor, the one who helped the original one and a lot of the Kamen Riders, because he does come back in future series. And we get that he's actually like going up the hill and launching those rocks down the hill to try to help the Kamen Rider, learn to fight back and actually improve his skills. And I think that's great. You get to see Tachibana as an actual mentor helping him train
by throwing more foam rocks at him.
Yes, they're foam rocks, but there's a line there.
I make that joke at every special effects anything from this era. Star Trek did it. What are some other? Just everybody did it. It was just a thing. So
yeah, but there's a line there, and I had to make sure it wasn't in either of our awards for later on in the episode, but it's not. But there's a line there where Tachibana says, "Hey, I've trained you to be the best motorcycle racer in the world, and you tried really hard. You almost gave up, and but you pushed through and you were able to succeed. So I'm going to help you again now." And I thought that was such a powerful moment in this episode.
Mm-hmm. It was a good moment. And admittedly, I felt like KR gave up a little easily just by getting a few rocks thrown at him. But I think the idea is that he got hit so hard because Lizardlon, Bootleg Godzilla would kick them because he's a mutated soccer player, and I guess they hit him so hard. He's like, "Oh, I can't do this anymore." And then he just started going to cliffs and he would literally kick the side of a mountain and make rocks fall so he could try to dodge them or smash them. I'm like, that's pretty impressive if you could kick a mountain and cause a small avalanche.
Yeah.
And then when Tachibana starts throwing him at him, they figures it out. And then he doesn't so much learn a new move as he powers up the one he already has.
Yeah, he learns the Lightning Rider kick, which is just a more powerful rider kick.
Lightning Rider actually sounds like a really cool name, I have to say.
Yeah, it does.
He's clearly a Metallica fan because Ride the Lightning.
I like the scene after
Kazuya.
Kazuya. I like the scene where Kazuya is in the hospital recovering after the fight and getting hurt, and we get to see his wife again. His wife, who was almost kidnapped by Giba Condor from a few episodes ago. But he also, you see the emotion in the actor's face. Like, he did a really good job of selling that scene where he's like, Kamen Rider gave up, or he didn't say gave up. He said Kamen Rider lost, and I don't know what to do. We have to find a way to beat this guy. And it's just like, it's such a powerful moment that you can tell Kazuya has put a lot of faith in Kamen Rider, and as far as he's concerned, Kamen Rider has now been defeated, as far as he knows.
He's kind of a stand-in for the audience, isn't he? He's a Kamen Rider boy. Kazuya is us and we are Kazuya.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I like that character. I think that's really cool.
And then the next scene, he goes back to the mansion, and I wrote down this little line. He says, "That's my mission as an FBI agent." And then I added, "Let me exposit loudly to myself."
Yeah, I mean, you get that, of course.
It's a thing.
Of course. But we mentioned earlier how this episode not only was the end of kind of an era, or at least at the moment, this was kind of the end of the Hongo period as Kamen Rider, but it also was the start of kind of it started a lot of tropes and a lot of trends that continued on in future Kamen Rider series. One of them, and I didn't mention it in previous episodes because I was waiting until the reveal that Kazuya was an FBI agent, but we do get police officer and FBI agent characters in future Kamen Rider series who are a major part of the storyline and helping the Kamen Rider of that series, whether it be defeat the bad guy or solve the mysteries or whatever, that you do see it in Kuga, in
I was gonna say,
Agito.
I've seen a few episodes of Kuga, and there's actually a lot of time spent in a police station.
Yes, yeah, there is. And Agito, in fact, in Agito, the police officer is a Kamen Rider himself, becomes a Kamen Rider himself, and he is actually my favorite of all the secondary writers. I think that the GX3, I think is what it's called, or G3. No, that's what it is. G3 is what it's called. In Kamen Rider, Agito is my favorite of the secondary writers. I think his character is more interesting than even the main writer of that series. But yeah, so this again, we're seeing another trend that starts with this original series and continues on in future Kamen Riders.
Funny how something like this gets birthed out of necessity. It actually reminds me a little bit of Doctor Who, how they invented the concept of regeneration, because the William Hartnell, the original actor for the Doctor, had to leave because of his deteriorating health. So we're like, but the show's popular. We want to keep it going. What do we do? We have to recast. What do we do? And then they came up with the idea of regeneration to account for the fact that the Doctor looks different. And it's one of the central components of Doctor Who mythology now.
Yeah, and it was such a genius thing because then you had a built-in in-universe reason for the Doctor looking different and for them to constantly and it gave them an out to be able to continue the show for as long as they wanted to, essentially. I mean, it's still going. But yeah, it is interesting, and I don't think when I watched this original series originally, when I first watched this original series a while back, I don't think I appreciated how many things carried over into future Kamen Rider series. But now that I have become more familiar with other series and the franchise as a whole, I can see it. I can be like, oh yeah, this is something that carries over into the future of the franchise.
Although I'm starting to see a little bit of the seams now, noticing that they're using different stunt actors for KR, because I noticed in a few shots that Kamen Rider had strangely long hair sticking out of the back of his helmet.
Yeah, it's what I told you in the last episode, that, these suits that they made, the Kamen Rider suit was made for Fujioka. Like they modeled it for him and molded it for him. So and they didn't have time or the budget to produce another one right away. So they had to just use the suit with a different actor. And you can kind of tell it doesn't really fit as well on these other actors as it did Fujioka.
Yeah, and I'm going to connect this back to another thing. Bringing back all of these kaijin to make the Evil 11, as I'm calling them, it reminded me of Mega Man. You ever played the old Mega Man games? Yeah, where when you get to the Wily Castle, they give you a boss rush, or as I called them, the mandatory rematches, and you have to fight all of the bosses you've already defeated again.
Yeah.
One right after the other. That's basically what's happening here.
Yeah, he has to Rider fight and then do a dab.
Yeah, now we get Rider fight, and he does his dab pose. And then it's great fighting stance, because you remember he did that and started walking in a circle like he was going to pick a fight with one of the guys.
Yep. Yep. That is this Kamen Rider's pose.
Yep.
These early, especially in the Showa era, Kamen Riders are known for the pose that they do.
They are pose-tastic.
Yeah, and so you could actually pick out in silhouette the Kamen Riders based on just the pose they're making.
Oh, I mean, kind of like our podcast logo.
Yeah. Kind of like our podcast. I specifically asked Michael when he was making the logo if we could use a Kamen Rider in the logo because I love Kamen Rider. Even though this show, I promise listeners, this show will not be 100% Kamen Rider. We will do other things eventually, but I will always talk about Kamen Rider.
Yeah. It wouldn't be Henshin Men. It would not be you without the gospel of Kamen Rider being spoken of.
I know.
Let's just say you are you're basically a Kamen Rider evangelist at this point. You're as many people as possible.
Well, you know what, and I mentioned it to Michael, my co-host on Kaiju Weekly, that I probably wouldn't be as enthusiastic about Kamen Rider if more people actually watched it. I think it is the fact that it is still such a niche thing that so few people know about or are aware about, but yet I know a lot of people would enjoy it if they just gave it a chance or if they just took the time. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic about it, because I'm like, no, like you like Super Sentai, you like Ultraman. Well, here's Kamen Rider. It's really good. You should watch it.
Yes, that was actually one of the impetuses for starting this show, was to make people more aware, especially since you and we both already have built-in fan bases for our solo podcast. Well, not in your case, not really solo, but for our other podcasts. So we're trying to say, hey, come listen to this. Hear us talk about something like Kamen Rider, and maybe you don't know about it, but you should know about it. And you're making if lack of a better way to put it, you're making a believer out of me. I went into this, I'm just like, okay, this is something Travis likes, and I enjoyed those movies that I watched. I'll give it a shot. And then I'm just like, this is more fun than I thought it would be.
Well,
King.
Speaking of things that you like, Bee-Woman makes an appearance in this.
Oh, good Lord, Bee-Woman. Thankfully, she's not in it very much, but
no,
she comes back and we get to see those glorious bee cups. That was a joke I forgot to bring up the last time, so there you go, folks. You got to put up with it. You know what? Bee cups. Because it deserves that. I'm sorry.
Yes, it does.
So sorry. To quote Doctor Who, since we brought up Doctor Who, I am so sorry. No, I'm not.
Yeah,
but
she gets she gets knocked out of the fight pretty quick, though. Like, she shows up and then gets thrown off to the side, and that's pretty much it.
It shows you how effective she is. But
okay. The greatest thing about her getting knocked out, though, is her and Mantis Man get knocked out at the same time, and the way that they lay on the ground, kind of twitching their legs like bugs that are dying, is so ridiculous, and I love it.
Oh my gosh! But speaking of ladies, am I the only one who thinks that Ruriko kind of gives Kamen Rider a bit of this knowing look? Like, I think I know who you really are, dude.
Let me think. Every time Hongo disappears, you show up. You sound like him. You're interested in fighting these bad guys like he is. I wonder.
She's it took her she's like Lois Lane. It took her a couple of movies, but she figured it out.
Yeah, she figured it out, and then her brain gets wiped by a kiss.
Yes, but not before she decides to. Well, if you watch the Donner cut, where she decides, I'm going to shoot him. Oh wait, it's blank. Ha ha. Anyway, enough about Superman.
I really like the fight between all of the monsters, the Evil 11, like you said, and Kamen Rider. Like, that is a really epic moment where it's just all the monsters that we've seen up to this point all coming together and attacking Kamen Rider all at once. It was just great. It was really great.
And I think it also illustrates that Hongo's training must have paid off, because he took on 11 villains, all of whom gave him trouble by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So Shocker is probably kicking themselves a little bit, or Rider kicking themselves a little bit now, thinking like, crap, he got more powerful.
Yeah.
Well, now what do we do?
Yeah, but it brings up an interesting thing in certain series and shows. And the one that stands out in my mind is Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, where the whole premise of that show is you fight, you lose, you get stronger, you come back, you win.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't seen that formula up to this point in Kamen Rider, but I like that was in this episode and in this episode / movie that Kamen Rider shows up, he fights, he loses, he has to train to get better, and then comes back and wins. And I think that's a great journey. Like I said, it reminds me a lot of Spider-Man, because Spider-Man has that same kind of like journey when he's fighting a lot of his villains.
Mm-hmm. It's also basically the formula of a lot of Rocky movies.
Yeah, it is. It is. I do want to mention real quick, the leader of Shocker, speaking through the big flashing light on the eagle statue, says that the Japanese branch of Shocker is lagging behind the it listed the American branch and the European branch.
It's just so funny to find out that this is an international organization with branches.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've talked about how they are tied to the thing that rhymes with Yahtzee. And so it's interesting that this, it is an international thing, and that there's different branches, and that the Japanese branch is lagging behind mainly because of Kamen Rider.
So is there a Shocker commander, like a Cobra commander? Is that the guy we always hear, or is he just in charge of the Japanese branch?
There is a leader of Shocker. I will say that when we'll find out more about that as the show goes on. But there is a great leader.
Does he have a mask and a lisp?
No, no. Actually, he is an actor that you would be familiar with watching Godzilla films.
Ooh.
So, but we'll talk about that as we get further down the line, because that's a long ways down the line.
Yeah, we got a lot of Kamen Rider to get through. But and since we're spending so much time on this one episode, we're coming up to about the time when, if we were doing two, we would do our awards. So you ready to move on to the awards, Travis?
Yeah, let's do it.
All righty then. So first up, we have the Henshin Kick for our favorite action scene or move or whatnot in just one episode this time. So in episode 13, what is your nominee, Travis?
For me, this, like I said, I always go with the stunt work, the stunt choreography here, because even though yes, there is wires, yes, there's fancy editing behind the scenes, there's still a lot of work and a lot of effort that these stunt actors have to go through. I mean, look, Fujioka injured with a broken leg. Kind of shows that. So I always like highlighting the really awesome stunt work that they do. And the stunt that I really enjoyed was Kamen Rider riding his motorcycle straight into one of the rocks that Lizardlon kicked towards him, and it exploding right in front of the motorcycle. I thought that was just a really epic entrance, because that was Kamen Rider entering into the fight, was that moment. And I just really like we talked about the epic entrance from what was it, last episode or 2 episodes ago, where he just grabs the boomerang out of the air.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of another infamous scene, but
that one too, where he just jumps up. Like, Kamen Rider's known for his big entrances, and this entrance was one of my favorites. I just loved how the motorcycle, and that is a stunt that there was some behind the scenes kind of special effects magic behind it, but it still was a difficult thing to pull off. And I think they did a great job with it.
This episode, I have to admit, had so many things. I was coming up with so many candidates for all of these awards. It was hard for me to pick. So for my Henshin kick, I kind of had two. So here, my runner-up is much like we talked about in our previous episode where Geba Condor took a rider kick and didn't die. So does Lizardlon. But then he gets the upgraded version. He got the lightning rider kick, but not the actual kick. He KR hit one of the rocks, sent it back to Lizardlon, and then Lizardlon exploded. And you do. But that did not win. No, that didn't win. My winner for the Henshin Kick Award can be summarized in 2 words. Oh, yeah. Kamen Rider for a hot second was the Kool-Aid Man because he just comes bursting through the wall. That was the immediate thing that went through my head. It's like, if I could take that scene and redub it, it would be, oh, yeah. Yeah, because that was another entrance. It was just like, oh no, Taki's getting beat up by Shocker. Oh, girl.
Like I said, Kamen Rider likes to make some entrances.
There it comes. It's great.
Yeah, there's so many great moments. This episode, I mean, we wanted to do, or I specifically wanted to do this focus on this one episode for this whole episode of the podcast, and mainly because, like we said, it's the end of the Hongo era, and well, at least the first part of it, and moving into the next era of this Kamen Rider, but also just because there's so much that's packed into this episode. There was so much that was packed into it that it really, we could have dedicated a whole episode of the podcast to it. And so that's why I was just like, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just do one whole episode of the podcast about this one episode of Kamen Rider.
Yeah. So now we'll move on to our next award. It's Taken Toku. So the best special effect.
Yeah. And so for me, I think we both had the same one. It's the same effect that they did back in the episodes with Scorpion Man. And I think they've improved the effect even from then.
They did.
But it's when Lizardlon pulls off his human face to reveal the cyborg kaijin alien monster face underneath.
Yeah, and because he's the guy that Taki was talking to with all of the clay statues. And I'm just like, who's this weirdo rich guy who lives in this mansion and he's got all these dead bodies? And then he's just like, and I am Lizardlon.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
And to be fair, it is the same actor who was playing the soccer player earlier.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, like, if you paid attention, it is the same guy. He just in a different setting now. Now he's dressed up like a rich guy.
Yeah, it was just a shock to see that he's just like, whoa!
Yeah, just peeling back, doing the Mission Impossible mask thing.
Basically.
That is, and it looks so good, and it adds, again, I always talk about it, the element of horror that really was missing for most of this episode. Like, we didn't have, someone trying to steal the blood of virgins or puppies. We didn't really have a lot of those scary horror moments in this episode, but then we get to the part where he just peels off his human face to reveal the lizard one underneath, and I was like, okay, there it is.
Oh my goodness. And just so you know, that's going to come up again later in the awards. And I don't care. So, coming at ya, the best line. And once again, I have so many.
Okay, well then why don't you share with us?
I have 2 runners up for this because there were so many good singers and one-liners in this episode. The one my 2 runners up, and I don't know, I keep going back and forth. It's like I almost want to pick one of the runners up now, but one of them was from the Shocker Commander, where he says, "Fools, just make a stronger cyborg." They're like, we can't break the barrier with any of our monsters. Like, fools, just make a stronger one. I'm like,
just make a stronger one.
Okay.
Why didn't
You know,
I think of that?
Yeah, right. Straight to the point. Okay, keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. Got it. And then, this was the soccer player in Full Tilt villain mode. He was talking to, because all the statues come to life, air quotes, come to life, and just tells him off. I'm just like, this sounds like a very applicable line in a lot of real life situations. He says, "You're all losers. You don't get an opinion."
Which is true.
But even I almost might make that one the winner, because the one I had from the same scene, and I really only went with it because, as I mentioned before, it's kind of meta, where he says, "Oh, please, they're made of clay." Taki. So, oh man, it's so many good ones.
So many good ones. My favorite, I kind of hinted at it early on, but my favorite is "The Kamen Rider has lost," and that's from Taki. And it, like I said, it's that is a powerful line, because especially if you're a kid in the 70s watching this, and you get to that moment where, wait, what? Kamen Rider's lost? How is that possible? Like, we haven't had that happen up to this point. Like, Kamen Rider has, he's been in kind of like hard straits and been in traps and stuff, and he's always found a way out of it. But then to actually come out and say, no, Kamen Rider's lost and we don't know what to do now. It was just I thought that was a really powerful moment.
And then we come to my favorite award, WTH, what the Henshin? And something we've already talked about, like I said, it comes back, and that's Lizardlon ripping his face off, because I did not see that coming. It comes out of nowhere. It's just, he's talking to the other 10, and he's like, "And my face!" I was just like, okay, all right. Went full tilt Mission Impossible there. Got it. You're a lizard man. Bootleg Godzilla. I get it. And he's mugging the camera when this is happening.
Oh, yeah. Right? Oh, absolutely.
So it just adds to the shock value. So it's because it just happens so fast and so suddenly, and they change the lighting and everything. So just like, oh, I was just like, crap. One of those jump out of your feet moments.
Yeah. It's good. My what the Henshin moment is the monster, quote unquote, statues that were in that scene, because it's so obvious that they are guys in suits, because you can kind of see them moving just slightly, trying not to move and trying to look very still, but they're all stuck under sheets, and we don't even know why are they there. Why are they under the sheets? Were they just waiting there just in anticipation of someone showing up? What?
Is this like a weird museum or something? It's like House of Wax. Is it House of Wax or something? I
would have loved that. I would have loved if this was like, if it was a House of Wax and these were wax statues, and then the real ones showed up later. That would have been cool. But no, these are the actual things, because as soon as Taki leaves, they just start moving like nothing's, whatever.
I was like, hey,
we should have killed him.
Guy, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Why didn't you kill him? I would.
Well, that brings us to our next segment, which is Minute to Henshin It.
All right, and this is the part, heroes, where we give our final thoughts and our summations of everything that we've talked about in the episode in 1 minute or less. You want to go first, Travis, or shall I?
I'll go first.
All right. Runners on your mark. Get set. Go.
Henshin. Okay. So yeah, this is, like we've said, a very momentous moment in Kamen Rider history. This is the moment where they have to transition from using Fujioka because of the injury to moving into a new stage, and even the preview for the next episode, if you're watching this on Tubi, the preview for the next episode says it's all new, all different. It's completely changed in the next episode. So as much as we've loved Kamen Rider up to this point, to know that this is where things begin to change, it's really a momentous moment. And I think if you're going to watch any single episode of the original Kamen Rider, this would be the one I would pick.
Wow, had about 8 seconds left there. Good job. I have all new, all different. Where have I seen that thing before?
I know.
And now it's my turn because I have a minute to Henshin it. So it's interesting to see this, as you hinted at. It's kind of the end of season 1 in this, and things are going to shift. I'm going to be very curious to see how they shift. I'm curious to see how the introduction of our new writer is going to go. I will say, if Kamen Rider had ended with this episode, other than the fact that Fujioka is only in it briefly through stock footage, I think it's an okay note to go out on, because there's a sense of finality here to a certain extent with bringing all of the kaijin back and battling them once more. But we're promised more. And I'm going to be very curious, like I said, to see how that goes. I've gotten the impression that the tone of the show is going to shift a little bit, and not everyone necessarily likes that shift. So as the resident noob here, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Imagine if Kamen Rider had stopped at this point. We wouldn't have Starfish Hitler.
The most surreal supervillain ever of all time.
That's the thing.
That is real, people. That is real. Go Google it right now.
I don't know. I feel weird telling people to Google Starfish Hitler, but it is a thing.
It's from what? Kamen Rider V3?
Was it? No, I think it was Kamen Rider Super. I think maybe.
It's one of those. It was one of those. It's one of the 70 shows. Yeah. It's nuts. It is nuts. But it's time to close up shop.
Yes, and so we're going to do that by saying thank you for listening to the Henshin Men, a tokusatsu appreciation podcast. You can find links to all of our social media in the description of this episode. You can listen to more of me on the Kaiju Weekly podcast and listen to more of Nathan on the Monster Island Film Vault. If you found some enjoyment from this podcast, consider giving us a 5-star rating on iTunes. And until next time, what are we going to say, Nathan?
I wish I had a band for this, but here we go. But go, Kamen Rider! Go, Kamen Rider! You mighty morphin' Kamen Rider!